I'm Jason Phillips. I'm the co-founder of Impact by Insight. We are a business intelligence and analytics consultancy. So we help businesses turn their data into insights that they can act on.
So I would really like to get into your career story, where you started and the steps you took along the way to get to where you are today, and maybe some of the pitfalls or challenges you faced and how you went about overcoming them.
Yeah, it's actually a long story now. I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been in data and analytics for more than 25 years. And really, I kind of started on a different path and got here. But I'll run you through it as quickly as I can. So out of college, I went to Colorado State. I wanted to move down to Denver and stay in Colorado. I did. I moved here. I got a little job at a place called Standard & Poor's. You've probably heard of them from the S&P 500 fame and other types of financial instruments. I showed up there and I thought I was going to be doing some type of entry-level financial analysis. Turned out what I was doing was data entry. I was happy to have the job and be working. The economy was good, but not amazing for new college graduates then, and it was a good company. So I stayed there for quite a while. I began to move into some better roles. It was more like analytically inclined and data focused and a little bit less on data entry. But while I did that, I also transitioned into getting my master's degree. I went to the University of Colorado at Denver. Like a lot of other people, I went to night school. I was working, which was great. And those types of things are awesome challenges, but I just can't tell you, it left me with that horrible taste in my mouth of like, boy, I just don't want to go to any more school, which is a lot to do while doing other things. But it also prepped me for balancing a lot, which is now great life learning for later as I become an entrepreneur. So I lasted there about 6 years. Then I moved on. I moved on to a company called MoneyGram International. They are like a rival to Western Union, basically. So they do money transfer, money order, and really play at the opposite end of the financial services perspective, where I've spent most of my career. They're looking more towards the unbanked and helping people that really can't afford or don't trust financial institutions to help them manipulate and move money and to do so in a secure and safe way. They pay a huge premium for that. But those services are fascinating and very needed by those folks. And so I worked there for quite a while. And really there I began to transition from data types of validation work and then moving into true financial analysis, and then ultimately what became what I do now, which is really analyzing data, producing trends, forecasting, helping businesses make informed choices with information.
Yeah, so sounds like your background was in finance, and I think you got an MBA. So
I do, yeah.
You're very much from the finance you were working in the finance industry to start your career, and that's how you kind of got started with working in data in general.
Right, yeah, and at the time, this would have been like early 2000s. Data wasn't, it was a thing for sure, but it was really in its infancy compared to where it is now. The tools for doing analysis, especially on large data sets, were extremely limited. The best tools that we really had early in my journey was Excel. And if we got information, a lot of times we would ask what was known as a random developer or sometimes engineer, depending on what your company culture was, but they would write SQL based on what you asked them to do. And then they would pull queries out, and you hoped you were strong enough in what you asked for to get what you were hoping to get, because generally those would be exported to a CSV, and that would be what you would utilize. And most of that manipulation was done in Excel. But you asked a question of like how I got into it. Yeah, financial analysis was the big thing. A lot of it came about from forecasting. So in my financial analytics role, largely FP&A type of things, a lot of what I did at MoneyGram was forecasting. So I helped the business understand its projections, its trends, and to figure out niches like country to country transfer projections and expectations, and that was fed up through various other folks that helped to use that to do financial projection models and all types of sophisticated, for lack of a better term, financial forecasting, at least for what we could do at that time. But really in the next 10 years or so, the mid-2000s is when things began to change. Tools that were basic business intelligence tools like Cognos and business objects. These really challenging early tools that just weren't very flexible and really produced canned reports. They were really terrible and hard to use, but they began to give us what I would call like GUI-based SQL interfaces, and we could put those on top of data sets really for the first time. And then, a few years later, we began to see tools like Tableau come out, and those were really game changing as far as being able to move the needle forward. So after about 5 or 6 years at MoneyGram, I was asked to leave, or asked to move actually, and I refused to move. So instead I accepted a package. Not the last time in my career I would do that. And I jumped to TD Ameritrade, which was a great place to work. I worked in the brokerage industry there for a decade, if you include the part where Charles Schwab had acquired us. I was really, really fortunate there. Great company, really focused on data, gave us some fantastic tools, and really invested in the teams, had some really great peers. And that's really where I think things kind of began to accelerate and take off for me. I really began to love working in business insight development and leading teams. And so we had a great group there. We mostly focused on selling, marketing, and product data within the organization. And I had other peers to other parts. And so we worked as a group to support them. While we were there, the business unit that we were part of, they went from under $100 billion in assets that they managed to over $800 billion. So there was just a tremendous amount of growth and excitement. Eventually, we were acquired by Charles Schwab, and I made it there about a year and a half. I was able to get most of my team high and dry. It was really clear that the person who was my counterpart on the Schwab side was entrenched and really capable. And I knew that I was not going to last. As most of the executives didn't last even as long as I did, and I was a layer below that, I definitely thought that I was going to go, and I kind of made it be known that I was ready for a package. Frankly, been there for 10 years. I was ready to try something else. I really wanted to get into either entrepreneurialism, or I wanted to go be part of a startup and do something that was a little bit more adventurous. I just had grown really tired of corporate life, even though TD Ameritrade was a very, very great company to work at. Any questions before I wrap this up, because I'm almost done?
Yeah, I'm wondering what types of projects within marketing and sales that you worked on. Maybe if you had like some favorites or coolest ones, highlights.
Sure. Yeah, I'll think of two things. I'll say one that's more nuts and bolts, one's more cutting edge. So the nuts and bolts stuff that really mattered was helping to work with the sales teams to help understand how the sales compensation plans operated, and then working with them to set the right incentives, and then ultimately tracking those and making sure that people got the incentives, they were paid accurately, it was clear what they were measured on, it was clear what their rewards were, and that they could track those throughout the period so they weren't surprised by missing goal or getting an underpayment. I thought that was really crucial stuff that we did on the selling side, along with all kinds of other fun, more sophisticated stuff. But people discount the importance of the nuts and bolts. I can't tell you how much it is important that I've learned from me throughout my career. It's like, don't be afraid to do the dirty work that matters. Those types of things are incredibly impactful to the business, and the salespeople care a lot more about knowing whether or not they're going to get paid than whatever neat chart you're going to show them. And so the other thing that I would say that we did is a little more cutting edge. It's really more on the customer retention side. So a huge aspect of the clients that we worked for, which were largely financial advisors. So we were institutional into the brokerage, and they faced the institutional advisors who in turn had customers. And so what we could do is look within an advisor and say, how well does this advisor do at retaining their clients? Because we can see their underlying brokerage accounts. And what we were able to do is produce attrition modeling for every advisor that we had to be able to see how they compared to their peers and being able to hold on to clients that they've won. Really sophisticated modeling, frankly, to get behind that. Attrition metrics are notoriously difficult to get right. You have to do a lot of time dimension planning to get that done. I worked with my now current business partner, Rob Galpy, who I worked with at TD Ameritrade to build out some of that stuff. I'm really proud of it. I thought the work was great. It didn't have quite as much impact on the business as I would like, but it was like some super fun business math you would like.
Cool. It sounds really awesome.
I really enjoyed it.
Some really great projects. So going back to your career story, what was the next step now?
Yeah, so I just had two more stops. The first thing I did is I joined a startup called On-Ramp Invest. They were a crypto startup, and they were trying to bring crypto assets to financial advisors. We did do that. Truth be told, it was a total disaster, at least for me. I didn't really work very well with the CEO. There was a clash pretty quickly. But I lasted only about 8 months there. I was given an opportunity to resign, which was great because it was better than being fired. And I knew it wasn't working and I didn't want to be there. Frankly, when I look back at it, though, I learned some incredibly important lessons because I realized if these guys could go out on their own and they could be entrepreneurs and they could raise millions of dollars, which I helped them do, then I could go out and be an entrepreneur. And I didn't even need to raise millions of dollars. I could just start my own shingle and hang out a shingle doing what I'm doing. And I needed a good partner, and I found one to launch this business. But that really set the stage for my next step, which is where I'm at now. So for the last 3.5 years, we've been running our business called Impact by Insights. We really focus on the mid business market, maybe small by some measures. So we're looking for generally firms that are usually about 10 to 20 million in revenue or above, all the way up to firms that are up to $1 billion in revenue. Anybody who basically is large enough to have enough data where that can begin to become cumbersome and difficult for people to manage off the side of their desk, and ultimately large enough to be able to afford us.
So is this pretty much in the financial industry or any industry? Or
yeah, we've actually worked across a pretty wide range of stuff. We've had really strong clients in financial services for sure. Maybe legal tech is the right definition for our largest client. We're currently talking to a large RIA, and I'm hopeful that we win that business. So that'd be nice to kind of get back into the financial advisor support. We know a lot about that space. I have also done some great work for a larger restaurant group. That's been really interesting. I mean, I've worked in restaurants in college, and I know how stressful the work can be. So to be able to see it from the other end is pretty interesting. We've also helped a mental health clinic. We've helped a fintech startup as well. And then we've done a lot of dabbling here recently where we've helped a couple of different real estate investment firms do what I think are really cool analytic projects, which is taking analytical data and plotting it into business intelligence tools using mapping functions so you can get a visual layout of specific areas. And we've really even done some like marrying of that data with like plat mapping. And that's been really cool. I mean, you can kind of like see a cityscape from a plat map perspective, and then you can turn, certain properties green or red based on different indicators, and you can just zoom right into a neighborhood and do some things that are pretty fascinating. So those are great opportunities for us. We like them. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty diverse what we've been working on, and I hope that continues. The truth is like, we have a lot of financial services background for sure. There's no doubt that there's a tremendous need for analytics in that space, but I really love the variety. I love working with different small businesses and helping them be able to turn their data chaos into data action.
so I'm curious, how does the role of you and your co-founder differ? Do you guys have certain things that you take on given your skill sets, or do you do the same things?
No, thank God we don't do the same things. In fact, we had like a personality profile we did called a DISC profile. Maybe you've heard of it, but like it literally, we are the exact opposite sides of the Rorschach test. Like I'm all on one half, he's all on the other. We're really different people, but we actually have, I think, pretty similar ways of thinking. In fact, I don't think we've had one similar disagreement, and I could say I could never do what I'm doing without him. The role has become too technical for really my skill set. He's a master of SQL. He does all the data engineering that we're doing. Really, my specialty comes into doing, of course, I do write SQL. In fact, I was doing it right before I joined this call. But what I also do is I really try to leverage on the business intelligence outputs and the stuff after that. So what does this mean for the business? Can we present it in a meaningful way? Can I help people turn this into action? Can I do deep dive case studies to find out things like customer segments that may be underpenetrated or something to that effect? And so really mine comes from the analysis components of what I would call this. His really are on the data technical infrastructure, and he's a wizard. I'm very lucky to have him, but it's great because we've built this foundation, and then as we bring on more stuff, what we've done is we've used subcontractors basically to come in behind us and to fill in areas where we're not specialists and or where we just need more capacity. And so that's how we've grown to date. It's allowed us to be really flexible and lean, but I do think we're likely entering a cycle where we begin to bring on full-time employees. And that's a little daunting. It's also really the next step in our evolution because we do have a lot of growth aspirations. What we want to do is build a company that analysts love working at. Analysts are often the stepchildren at whatever organizations they are, constantly overworked and really sort of misunderstood. We love working with analytical people. We definitely think we could build a great environment that makes them excited to show up to work every day. And so we're looking to begin to build an employee company here shortly. But, you have to grow into that. You have to have the revenue. I don't want to take on payroll that I can't beat. So we're really focused on growth at this moment.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense. It's cool to hear about how you and your co-founder work together and the different roles that you take on. It can be hard to find a co-founder, so you're lucky to have found a great fit.
I really am, especially with the skill set. Yeah, you're right.
So one thing that I noticed that you do particularly well, and I think given your experience, um, you understand your customers' pain points pretty well, and I think you're able to speak to them. I see you on LinkedIn. You basically write your post all about the pain points of your ideal customers. So I would really love to speak about what pain points you see in your customers and kind of like if you have some sort of systematic way for thinking about it.
Sure. So let me talk about it in the pain points piece, but also before I do that, I want to give a shout out to someone who's really helped me recently with my LinkedIn game. So I do think our posts have become a lot better at targeting our ideal clients and the problems that they face. We're really trying to speak to the things that hopefully create and initiate conversations so that we can not just get hired, but help businesses identify that the things that they need that are out there for the problems that they have, that these are not unsolvable things that they can't afford. It's the reverse of that. These are solvable things that they can afford. So how'd that happen? Well, frankly, I went to a conference that otherwise was a total bust. I didn't meet one ICP, otherwise the conference, but I was able to attend a session that was held by a person named Leah Bliss. Leah did a full hour on LinkedIn algorithms and what they do and how they work and how to raise your profile. I learned a lot from her in that session, and I tried to use some of those tactics behind the scenes, and it did help. And that was maybe about a year and a half ago. But just last month, I actually hired her to help me learn her system, and it was very affordable. It was only $1,000. I got a full day's worth of service out of that. And so we worked together to take the ICP messages that we have and the pain points that we solved, and we actually turned that into content together. And she actually has helped me write these posts. So what you've seen recently has really come out of that system. The first post that I posted that she gave me, my normal post usually hit about 1,000 impressions. The first one did over 100,000. So I can't thank her enough or highly recommend her enough. She's done a great job. Her name's Leah Bliss. I'm happy to connect anybody who's interested to her. She's fantastic. What I would say, though, is that the pain points. Okay, so what do we do when we think about the pain points? Well, ultimately, what we know is that we never get hired to come in when things are awesome. That's not generally where people tap the types of consultants that we are. We're not a McKinsey-sized shop. We're not going to be able to just influence the CEO to be like, yep, you guys are great at business, we'll make you even better, and get hired in that way. That's extremely difficult pathways for us to come in. Instead, what we recognize is that the folks that we can reach and that will be motivated enough to move to hire us generally fit into one of two categories. They either have an immediate hiring challenge where they just do not have the right personnel to be able to meet the needs that the business has right now from a data perspective, and or they just can't afford a full-time analyst. Those types of companies that need data help are one of our customer profiles. So they're looking for basically missing labor. That's really important and an important niche. I hit those notes a lot in my posts. I literally put one out there today. The other thing that we are focusing on is really firms that are looking to basically move up the data-driven journey ladder. Okay, so the other things that I post about are really about like, how do you build an infrastructure that you can scale? How do you get from 5 versions of the truth, all funneled by one data silo and a SaaS tool, to a unified data infrastructure? Because if you're at that medium-sized level, really at some point what you need to do is you need to build a data warehouse. You need to build semantic layers on top of that warehouse. You need to build reports that actually are considered the North Stars for your scorecards. At an executive level, I think you can cascade those down into what I call mezzanine level reporting, which means next you hit the next level of managers, and then you put people that are at the ground level. You build reports that are actually empowering and tactically actionable for people at all levels. Those are the types of things that build a data-driven corporation as a backbone, and we offer that as a service. So we try to talk a lot about that because that's hard to come by, and it's hard to have talent at the ready for medium-sized organizations that are actually capable of executing that.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll just pair it back to you what I heard. I heard two things. The first being some organization that would like to get some data work done, but they don't quite have the budget for a full-time hire, so they just need like some sort of like part-time person to plug in. So this person is already aware that they need a data analyst, data scientist, data work, and they're already aware of what it is, but they just don't have the budget for a full-time person. Um, so that's kind of an interesting distinction, is that they're already kind of aware of what their problem is, but they just don't have the budget for a full-time person necessarily, and you kind of attack that problem. Then the other one is that data is in different places and you need to figure out how to align everything so that you can understand what's going on across an entire organization, rather
Yeah.
than department having their own definitions of how things are done and then not being able to understand how the organization as a whole is doing.
It's true. Yeah, multiple versions of the truth, manual processes that are used to circumvent siloed data. That's another like huge issue. We've talked to many clients, and we're talking businesses that make tens of millions of dollars in revenue, sometimes in the hundreds of millions, that are running their business off some kind of harvested spreadsheet that they are pulling from various systems and then manually, or for lack of a better term, maybe manual is not the right word, but somehow processing and then using that as a dashboard type of tool. Look, that's not, I don't fault businesses for getting to where they're at using something like that. What I fault them for is continuing to do it when there are better, more affordable options. Almost always those spreadsheets are at risk of collapse. They almost always have errors in them. But even more important is it's just a humongous single point of failure and an expensive one to maintain. So sure, it can go wrong at any time, but the real risk is that some person has to be involved in this, and they have to be on your staff basically permanently because they have this institutionalized knowledge of how to do this colossal thing that nobody else does. All of that should be productionalized because it's just so much more scalable and efficient and generally removes costs. I mean, when we come into companies, we are blown away by how expensive these manual reporting environments that they are maintaining, because when you move to a business intelligence tool and a semantic layer and a data warehouse that are largely set up to do these things automated, you cut this massive labor costs out of these back-end maintenance systems. And that's really a huge benefit for them because it means now they can invest in doing other things. Maybe those are data things or not, but they just don't have to spend the money on maintaining a legacy system as an embedded fixed cost.
Yeah, so as an organization scales, they run into this issue. When they start out, it's fine to have spreadsheets and Excel files. And then at some point, it gets to be too much for them to handle. So, what are some telltale signs that it's time for someone to start investing in a data warehouse and to start getting that infrastructure in place? Because it might be kind of hard to know when is the right time if you're in their shoes.
Yeah, man, that is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking me that. I would say that the signal that I hear most, or there's several signals, but I'll start with the ones I hear most. So the ones I hear most when I'm talking to senior leaders with businesses are multiple versions of the truth problem. And generally that symptom comes about because whomever is harmonizing the data and producing those types of manual reports, they can no longer keep up with it enough where they can harmonize these multiple versions of the truth. So instead, things start to become fractured, and one marketing team is saying X, and one sales team is saying B, and the accounting team is saying a third team thing. That's very, very common as a signal. The next signal that I would say that I hear is something to the effect of so-and-so can't take time off at the beginning of the month or some period following a quarter end, because all of these manual behaviors have to happen so that we can close the books, so that we can get people paid, so that we can make sure the sales comp is fair, so we can file the reports to compliance organizations or whatever is happening. But basically some massive, colossal processing engine that is human driven is literally preventing somebody from being able to literally not be present. And so those use cases are terrifying, because a lot of times they are with businesses that have been around for a long time, and they're hosted by a legacy person who basically plays this hero role that otherwise would be replaced by a data warehouse and a semantic layer and those types of things. And that hero is a humongous single point of failure risk. If anything happens to them, good or bad, maybe they win the lottery and they retire, or they get hit by a bus, whatever may occur that prevents them from being able to show up tomorrow, boy, that's risky for a business, right? Several businesses that we've talked to are basically in a scenario where they have one person that does all this stuff, and nobody has any idea of how that gets done. There's not a word of documentation outside of what's being done within that one person, and that is just way too much risk for a company to bear. Anyway, that's one of the signals we hear as well.
Okay, so I heard two signals. The first being the company is starting to have disagreement between multiple departments. So they've scaled enough so that they have like a sales team, they have a marketing team, and they're starting to disagree about the same metric and what the actual numbers are. And then the other signal would be that there's a huge workload placed onto one person when it comes to some sort of reporting process around a metric. So someone isn't able to take time off, because if they take time off, then that number doesn't get updated, and then the company doesn't know where they're at.
You got it. And I'd say, the modern one that we're hearing, and this has now gone from something that was a whisper at this time last year to something that we literally can't not talk about, and leading into what I know some of the other things we're going to discuss today, but it's really about AI and positioning of AI. A lot of folks are concerned that they're either not adopting AI fast enough, or that they've done so in a way that is not governed, for lack of a better term. And people are looking for advice in this space. I think of this period right now, which is, September of 2025. What do I think about it? I think about it as the great AI uncertainty period. So it's difficult to have a conversation in the world of data and not hear about AI. Conversely, it's difficult to have a conversation in business and not hear about AI. And when people learn we do data and analytics, they immediately begin to ask us about AI. And that may or may not be a selling opportunity, but the signals that we're beginning to hear is, if we're going to embrace AI, how do we do that safely? What are the pathways to integrating models that would be beneficial to our business? What would we do? Those are all things that are questions that I'm having and conversations that I'm having with business leaders really consistently over the last 6 months.
One big thing that I've been contemplating is the difference between building your own models in-house and accessing already built state-of-the-art models and using them with your context to get predictions or outputs that you want. So I see the industry heading a lot towards something called AI engineering, where you use already built models and you use your context and you get your predictions or the outputs that you want for your business. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there'll be very limited types of businesses that build their own models. And I think many of those that matter have already done it. And then I think the other ones that will do that will be doing it either for niche specific cases that will be driven off of things like science, right? Or there'll be other niche specific cases where security is so paramount that they need to own every aspect of the journey and understand every part of it within the specific framework. So I think of like defense, maybe some healthcare type of stuff that may fit into that group. Everybody else is going to be leveraging some version of a purchasable widget that they then can either bring in or otherwise secure and integrate with their systems. And we've actually helped an organization that we work with do a AI widget ingestion, and it's helped them with their FP&A data. And this widget's really cool. It's called Concourse AI. What it does is it basically produces FP&A types of charts and graphs and allows you to do a lot of forecasting and knowledge questions to the business and various types of questions from a financial perspective, but to do it from like a natural question prompt, which takes a lot of the back end out of this. Now, I would say this is an exploratory tool, and I think a lot of AI is an exploratory state right now where you would say, boy, I can do a lot of testing and learning with this. I can get a lot of great ideas put out there. I can see whether or not I think they're good or not. I can test different forecasting techniques or even thoughts or implications of different demand factors. But then at the end of the day, what almost always is happening with even this widget that we've helped this firm deploy is you need to then say, I believe this. Now, can I go model this with actual financial data? Can an analyst prove these types of findings out? And so I think that's fascinating because it took data people on the front end to basically feed the right series of SQL queries into that widget and to make the right data available to that widget. And then ultimately on the back end, there's all kinds of business users that are utilizing the tool, but what's then happening is analysts are taking outputs from that and either validating them or not by producing other types of financial models that are supported and more permanent and constructed than what you would get out of an AI model.
Another angle to this that I heard about that I think makes sense is that in industries where you need to be audited and explain very clearly how it is that your output came to be, like what your model is doing to make the prediction, in those cases, it makes sense to build your own model in-house because you're going to be able to understand how it works precisely. But in cases where you don't need to do that, it frees you up to use models that are built by someone else that like ChatGPT or whatever you want. Do you think that plays?
I do. I do think that plays a big role. And I know, one of the another widget that we have talked to, I haven't actually done an integration with them yesterday, but another AI company, and I forget their name right now, but they've built a really sophisticated accounting widget, which I think kind of goes to this, wow, how much detail and how much traceability can I get out of something that AI is performing? Because look, we've done a bunch of different AI sort of like workflows with different people and shown them different things, but when I take the same prompt and I literally just copy and paste it and put it in a second time and I get a different result with that prompt, there's different levels of responses to that. What I've noticed is a business person is like, well, it's directionally the same. A finance person is like curious as to why it's different. And an accountant is just like, that is wrong. You can't ask something twice and have it give you two different answers and have me trust it. So if you think about the sophistication and the lineage that is crucial for being able to do accounting type of work and other types of pathways like you're talking about, where the audit trail is something that may even be governed or policed, for lack of a better term, by an outside regulator. Those AI models are likely going to need to be internal, and I'm assuming that if they're not internal, then there's going to have to be some other crazy amount of sharing of information that really help you to make an auditable path.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's cool to hear your insight on this topic. So two questions. One is advice to a data professional starting out in freelancing. I guess since you've already started and you've been quite successful with your co-founder, I guess what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out on their journey, quitting their job and starting to take on their own projects?
Yeah, the advice that I have for most people is, know your offering well enough to be able to go after ideal client profiles that can hire you. So there's a couple different pathways to do that. That's maybe become an expert at one very specific, say, software type, or one very specific programming language, or one very specific, I don't know, machine learning type of item, or neural networking programming, or something to that effect. Those machine learning and neural network pieces are in such demand because of the proliferation of AI and everyone's excitement about it. But what I would also say is those skill sets, right? Those are going to be needed somewhere. And so even if it's something as simple as I'm really great at Click, a business intelligence tool, okay? Well, that's great. That's a niche. People utilize that software. There's going to be tons of businesses that run it. I'm sure with research, you can probably try to figure out the different businesses that are running it. Then the question is like, how do you demonstrate your expertise? Okay, so how do you show someone a portfolio that says, here's proof that I do it well? Here's me showing the world that proof, either having something like a Tableau portal, public portal like we do, that people can go and click on and look at our dashboards and ask us to see demonstrated proof of our expertise. That's great. We don't just run one BI tool. That's not really our approach. But the point is that it's a vast business ocean, and the more niche your discussion points are about whether you can do something or not, gives a decision maker a point of either saying, I either need that or I don't. And what you want to be doing when you're having selling conversations or even just putting your services out there is you want to be able to get a decision maker to say that. Even no is a better response than I don't know if I need your services or not. Because no ends all of your selling efforts. You're saying, cool, I don't have to worry about calling on you anymore. If someone doesn't understand that and there's not an agreement that it's a no, then what can happen is you can have tons of selling conversations that are with people that literally can't hire you. You just haven't discovered that enough because you haven't done a good enough job of articulating what you can do. And if I would give one final piece of advice to that, where I'm saying like niching down is good, I would say industry niching is even better. So if you can demonstrate specific knowledge within a specific area, so that you can marry that to your other skill sets. You could say something like, I do demand forecasting for concrete suppliers. Okay, well, that's super niche for sure. But what it means is now when you begin to hunt for prospects, you can cast an extremely narrow net, and you can try to look for your ICPs within those folks that may purchase. And now you can send them specific messages that say, here's demonstrated proof of me helping a concrete supplier. Are you interested in that? Those types of messages are a lot better than just, I make charts and graphs. And that's not a great selling message. So I would say those niche approaches are really important for early freelancers, because the more that you're able to articulate your offering, the better you can position it. The better you can position yourself, the more likely you are to get a premium for your service.
That is really great advice. Thank you. And that reminded me of one other thing I would really like to ask about is the topic of pricing. How do you go about deciding what you're going to charge?
You know what? It's never easy. Here's what I would say. You need to think of a number of what you believe you're worth and what you believe you should be getting paid. That number needs to be something that you can do in the back of a napkin type of math in your head when you're talking to somebody. Sometimes you're going to get asked to do project work, which is really sometimes pretty broad, especially in the engineering spaces where people like to speak at vagaries. So we need to do X or Y data migrations, build a warehouse, and we need to do semantic layers. Well, man, those things can mean a lot of different things depending upon the sophistication of a business, the amount of data, the various number of sources, the different applications that you want to get out of the business use cases. So especially on the engineering side, what we found is we actually we price out diagnostic engagements. And so when we are talking about a big project where we're going to come in and build a data infrastructure for a company, we insist and we tell people that we say, look, we can't guess what this is going to cost. What it will take for us to know what it's going to cost is that you can hire us to write you an entire diagnostic plan that we will give to you. It's yours as an artifact, whether you hire us to implement it or not. But this will give you a playbook for how you can go about executing the project that you told us that you want to do. We're going to interview your team. We're going to look at. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was asking about that. Like, how much time do you take to do the diagnostic process?
It depends on the level of sophistication of the business. The longest I could really see one going is a month. The biggest one we've ever did, it took 3 weeks. We charged $7,500 for that, and the client was happy to pay.
Interesting. I think that's key. And you were going into what you interview the team, and I guess you explore like what infrastructure is currently there. Then you think about where they want to go and what it would take to get from where they are to where they want to go, and how much that would cost in terms of time and energy and resources on your part.
Yeah, and we also help them make tool selections too. So if they're, let's say they're running like a common one that we see is the companies a lot of acquisitions, they'll end up with, let's just call it like 3 ERPs running into that. Well, you don't need 3 ERPs. What do you need? We need one single version of the truth for a business. Okay, so what do you want to do? Oh, we want to try to get onto one ERP. Okay, well, like now we say, okay, well, what ERP are you picking? Well, which one should we pick? Well, we can help make those choices, but we can't make those choices from like hearing about it once. We have to like get behind the curtain and look at these things. And look, we don't know every ERP tool. So like a lot of times we're spending time educating ourselves about these tools, but we do know how to wrangle data into a warehouse from various SaaS tools and other types of tools, know how to build APIs, know how to build connections to make these things work. So the question is, can these tools provide the backbone of an infrastructure that can become a data warehouse, can become a data lake, that can become the types of tools you're going to want to have? So like you asked about pricing, and so I want to come back to this because I kind of dodged that question a little bit. I get distracted by the diagnostic engagement, which by the way, is an approach I highly recommend, folks, because what I've seen some of my competitors do that have won business where they didn't insist on a diagnostic engagement is they put a bid out for something that they've won, and then they literally turn around and are mad that they won it because they're like, I can't put the amount of hours in that this will take to execute this project and come out ahead because I charged a fixed rate. We all want to move away from hourly type of pricing because that seems commoditized and it doesn't seem like how we want to work. We want to work on a premium project, but bidding in data projects can be extremely complicated if you don't have enough information. So I just can't recommend that enough. But back to the how else do I price myself? So when I'm talking to a firm or our offering, not just us. So when I'm talking to a firm and I'm looking at what they need and I'm looking at what they can afford, I often offer increments of full-time equivalents. So when the project work is not project, but instead it's, can you help maintain my business intelligence environment? Can you build new reports? Can you provide analytical insights? When the work is more generic, what we will say is something like, well, that's about the equivalent of about a half a person a week. Okay, so then what we will do is price our services out for what we think that'll cost us to execute, and we make sure that we get a small premium on that if I bring in talent to execute those things, or if I'm doing it myself, that I make sure that like we'll bring in more than it will cost, and I'll say that'll give you X amount of hours worth of analytical resource, and we charge in that way. But the truth is this is the rub of all. This is why I keep going on about it. Is we know what we need to get from a client. And what that does is it prevents us from underpricing ourselves. And when I go out and I look at like freelance sites like Upwork, and I see things where like someone will say, I'm looking for a data engineer to work for us and to do all of this crazy stuff that we're asking them to do, and I'm going to pay $55 an hour. And I could never staff a talented data engineer at the level that I'm willing to work for $55 an hour in the US. That's literally impossible. If you're doing that, you're hiring a person who's incredibly inexperienced and not capable. And I just wouldn't agree to take that type of work on. So we charge what we would charge in those types of scenarios. And if somebody won't do it, then we just walk away. That's okay. We don't give our services away. We hold the line on price. And for us, that's just become absolutely paramount because it doesn't do us any good to grow in an unprofitable way. we're not a firm that is raising capital. We haven't taken in millions of dollars in investment. We've bootstrapped our company, so every dollar of revenue that we bring in, that needs to include some amount of profit, or it was revenue that was pointless for us to make. And I would say most freelancers are in the same boat. And so what you need to do is figure out what you believe you're worth, and then when you're talking to companies about getting hired, you've got to hold the line on that price. And if they aren't willing to pay it, then you need to move on to the next opportunity.
Yeah, that's great advice, and that could definitely be tough when you're starting out and you're trying to get your first few projects.
Yeah.
Um, to not accept the first thing that comes along. Um,
Yeah, and look, I get that at some point, if you are literally just trying to get your feet wet, especially if this isn't your full-time gig, then maybe you do make some sacrifices on price for smaller engagements. But what I would say is, be careful what you sign up for. Because if you do begin doing some work for somebody and they really love your work, but they're used to paying you half of what you're worth, it's going to be extremely difficult to change that dynamic with them.
yeah, definitely. Okay, and now taking another step back and thinking about if you're a firm that you would work for, what are some things that they should look for when they're hiring either, I guess, another firm to do work for them? How can they pick out who would be effective and who wouldn't be?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's really a few things. So the first thing is that look, experience can't be faked generally. Okay, so if I can look at someone's LinkedIn profile and I can say, oh, you worked in analytics successfully, meaning like you're gainfully employed for X amount of time frame, and I can see that progressed up the ladder, right? Maybe within those places, or you went from entry level to a standard level to a senior level type of person within these frameworks. I mean, man, that is just difficult to fake, right? So those are things that are important, and what that shows is a longevity within this that not only is proof of an ability to deliver, but it's also proof of commitment, right? It means the person you're hiring is likely not to flake out on you. If you are also trying to vet a person, especially if they're newer in the talent pool, and you're looking for specific tool types of things, what I would say is ask for a portfolio, ask for use cases, and ask for referrals, right? So I'd love to introduce our clients that are our prospects right now to our existing clients. I'd love to have them have conversations, because one of the things that's hard for us to convey and to get people to believe it is just how flexible we can be and how many different types of things we can do and do at a high level. And that's come through all of our experience and being able to help a bunch of different folks. But it's one thing to hear it from me. It's a total different thing to hear it from the people who we've already helped do that. And so what I would say is for both freelancers and the folks looking to hire consultants or freelancers, making sure that you have people that can explain your value, that you can connect people to, that's huge. And if you don't have that, then have portfolio proof. So if you want to say work as that click expert I talked about before, well, I sure as heck better be able to pull up a click dashboard that shows something that I would be proud of to a client, so that way they could say, oh yeah, there it is. There's demonstrated proof of what you're doing. And look, does that have to be the world's prettiest, most amazing thing? The better it looks, the better. But what I'd say is it sure as heck better have business impact. Okay, so I should at least be able to say, I built this dashboard, and like, it's not just a single line chart that shows my favorite movies that came out over time. No one cares about that. Instead, be able to show something like the business use case of this is X, and people will care for Y reason. Here it is on the screen. If you can do that, then you're likely talking to a person who can help you. And those are the types of freelancers that you should be looking for. That's, I guess, my advice to folks looking to hire consultants.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your advice. So now, if you were starting your career today, what advice would you give to yourself? And I mean this in two ways. What do you wish you would have done sooner? And also, how would you position yourself for where you see the market or the data industry heading?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to try to break it into two questions. The first one would be advice for myself, and then the other one would be the positioning component. All right. So the advice for myself would be really truthfully to get better at developing connections and building a network. The most important way that we have won business is through referrals. Truth is, the consultants you get hired are the consultants that you know, that you like, and that you trust. I didn't do any of that in the first 20 plus years of my career when I was at a corporation because I figured I'd just go from job to job. But when I became a freelancer or really a consultancy, had our own business, what really truthfully has kept the wind in our sails are clients that have heard from people that need that we're great, and those connections are just incredibly valuable. Even just today, I got a really lovely referral from someone who I'm trying to help. I really hope that that becomes another great opportunity, but I didn't do nearly enough network development as a younger man to be as positioned as I would like to be now. And so that would be the advice I would give people is do not skip on building your business network.
So, in terms of building your business network, what are some actionable ways that you wish you would have built it? Would it be, I mean, now we have LinkedIn, so would it be posting consistently on LinkedIn? Would it be career fairs? Like, is there something specific, one specific avenue that you wish you would have invested time in to develop your network, or is it just a general mindset?
I think it's a little of both. I will say this, sure, I should have done more general networking and I should have done those types of things. And I now do them all the time. And I post on LinkedIn and I work on building a portfolio that I'm proud of and so on. But I would say more importantly is that I absolutely 100% should have done a better job of building my network within the data community. Because the truth is that data people understand whether or not you're good or not. Whereas it's hard to determine that from on the outside. And if you could build your brand within a data community and people can understand that level, well, data people hire data people because data people get asked to take on more and more projects. So I really wish that I would have done a lot more of that. So we're actually looking into doing more of that now. So, could I do something? I've done things like been a Tableau ambassador over time. Like, I wasn't particularly a great fit for me. I'm not really much of a diplomat. I'm more of an executor. So now the question is like, well, as an executor and a person who like really wants to like go far and show our demonstrator capabilities, what would be some great communities for me to get connected to where I could do that? So that's really one thing. So let's then talk about positioning because I gave some advice earlier about niching that I need to start taking better ourselves. So if we think about what we're doing, there's two aspects that I will be addressing here over the next quarter. One is how can we create an industry niche? And can we create a service offering that better focuses on a specific niche that is industry driven and not tool driven or skills driven? We need to do that. That absolutely has to happen. And it has to be an offering that I can put on the screen and display and say something like, we do this for these clients. You're one of those clients. Do you care? We need to do that. The other positioning piece that I need is I need an entry level product. What is really hard about service offerings is that service offerings means someone has to understand our service and know that we can solve a problem that they have, and then we can begin to talk about doing business. If I could put a product on the screen, like let's say a dashboard that measures the one that we're working on measures our GA4 traffic, and not only can I interact with it outside of Google Analytics 4, I can instead interact with a business intelligence tool. I also will feed it through an AI prompt and bring back a verbal description of what my traffic looked like yesterday and what trends are changing. And that's really exciting. Somebody may really like that. And that can be super low barrier to entry to purchase and to start doing business with us. I could maybe charge somebody like $1,000 to install that for them and to get it set up with their website and their data. And so I need a product offering like that. And so that's the positioning that we're going to be taking on in the back half of the year. Well, I guess what's left of the back half.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you for sharing. I think those are both really insightful answers. So I really appreciate your responses. And now I guess we're wrapping things up. Where can people find you? What I know we've already talked about this, but what are you working on? How can people work with you?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to focus on where they can find us because I want to just put that out there first. So, first of all, you can always reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Jason Phillips. I'm the co-founder of Impact by Insight. You can also find us on our website, which is www.impactbyinsight.com, all one word. Those are great places to find us. If you are out connecting on LinkedIn, I do a lot of connecting on LinkedIn. I try to respond to people right away. So that's a great spot to find me. You won't go more than a couple days without a response there for sure. And if you're serious about hiring consultants and or you're serious about just exploring your career in data, I always take every kind of conversation that fits into those buckets. Then let's talk about the other things, the type of stuff that we're working on. So right now, we're really working on building a business that is driven by competitors' positioning. So those two things I talked about, but also rounding out our portfolio and making sure that our sales tactics and actions are backed up by proof of our capabilities. And those are the things we're doing internally. Externally, we're executing for our clients, and some of them would prefer to remain nameless. So I'm not going to rub their names around, but we continue to execute. So several really great engagements, and we got some great prospects. So those are the types of things we're focused on today.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Jason. I had a blast speaking with you, and I just want to say thank you.
Hey, man, it was my pleasure, and I'm really excited about you and your journey. I will be tuned in and watching, and I can't wait to connect again.